This afternoon, we're going to talk about strategic thinking, strategic planning in the NHS context at the moment. Be really helpful if you just want to introduce yourself first for folks.
Yep. Hi, Alistair. So my name's Kit Connick and I'm the Chief Officer for Strategy and Partnerships in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough ICB.
Brilliant, brilliant. And how long have you been working in this Cambridge and Peterborough system?
So I've been in the system for all my NHS career, which is now just over 20 years. I've been in a provider organisation, in back office functions and various project and corporate roles. And I started with the ICS the year before ICSs were formed, helped to close down the CCG, and then been in this role ever since. So just over 2 years in this role.
Right, brilliant. Okay. So like every integrated care system in the country, in fact, like every healthcare system in the world, but there are big strategic challenges, I guess, you face. What are the main ones as you see them in Cambridge and Peterborough, and what's the approach?
So I think that every system likes to think it's unique, and it is, and it's also the same as every other system. So I think we're grappling with the same uniqueness and the same similarities. So if I talk about our kind of challenges that are probably felt in most, if not all, systems, and there's real financial challenges about financial balance. I think there's about that that continual maturing as a system, what it means to act as a system, what it means to think as a system leader, and how you put on your system leader hat, and sometimes have to take off your provider organisation hat or your organisational hat, and understanding which hat you put on and why and to what effect. I think that the challenges we're all facing is the sustained, I'd call it like a sustained incident and a sustained critical incident of operational pressure, of the kind of winter pressures that are now no longer just in winter, here throughout the year. And at the same time, the expectation that whilst we're dealing with ongoing pressure and ongoing demand and ongoing expectation around delivery around that, and quite rightly, we're also expected to reform and plan and realign and transform for the future. So there's something about constantly juggling that horizon whilst dealing with the here and now, and making space for that. And when I talk about making space, I think that's headspace, intellectual space to think about what the future could be versus how it is. Emotional space to think and be different and to be challenged and to allow yourself to consider a new reality. And then also the resource space. How do you make sure that as leaders, we're still delivering for today whilst thinking about tomorrow? I don't think any of us have got the luxury to do one or the other. It's a constant juggle. And then if I think about the uniqueness of Cambridge and Peterborough, we're a system with relatively small systems, over 1 million population, but with some real diversity and diversity of services. So you've got very specialist tertiary services, you've got the standard service you might see in primary care and delivery, and then also with our population, you've got some significantly deprived areas and some areas of significant wealth. And so for us, it's how do you make sure that you understand the difference in your needs of the population and are able to standardise your strategy and approach to bring rapid change and benefit, whilst also tailoring it to the needs of the individual communities. None of that is easy.
No, and I know that you've got 2 new hospitals, for instance, at least in the mix as well. So there's some pretty concrete things that would have quite high level political attention as well, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that the new hospital programme is fantastic, and for our system, we're really excited about that for Hinchinbrook rebuild with the RAC, and you've got the Cancer Hospital and Children's Hospital. But of course, they aren't the only infrastructure, they aren't the only hospital sites, and they aren't the only place of delivery. And they bring attention to the system, they bring focus, they bring money, they bring investment, but we've got to think about the whole population, and we've got to think about how you balance the new and the shiny with understanding there are resources that aren't quite as new and shiny, and thinking about how we invest in those as well, and make sure that the benefit is for the whole population, not just the people who live within reach of those new hospital sites.
Yeah. And I'm obviously aware that as an ICS, you've got a kind of strategy development process, and as an ICB, you've got your joint forward plan development processes. I mean, how helpful have those processes been for kind of working through all of the challenges you've been describing?
So if I look back a year ago when we were given the guidance, it didn't feel very helpful. It felt like another thing to do, and I'm just being really honest about that. And particularly at a time when an organisation is new, it's forming, relationships are forming, people aren't quite clear about the governance and what it will look like and where we're heading. A year on, I'd say that actually it is a benefit, and particularly for our system, what it has accelerated for us when I think about our integrated care strategy. We're a system that's fortunate to be largely coterminous with our local authority boundary, and so we have a single health and wellbeing integrated care strategy, and that's really helped with giving us a single vision, an aligned focus that is the whole system and all the partners can buy into. I think the delivery of it is far more complex than that, but if you can write a single strategy that everyone says, yes, I recognise parts of that, I recognise how my organisation can contribute to it, I recognise how you build organisational objectives around that. I think the challenge is it's a short year, and that may sound a silly thing to say when there's 365 days in a year, but the guidance comes fast. It takes a long time to write a strategy or a plan. It takes even longer to make it happen, and then the guidance comes out again to refresh it. And so if I think about that joint forward plan that we're in the midst now of just finalising the refresh, we've only actually had 9 months, and 9 months is nothing in the context of health delivery and health services. So I think there's a challenge around pragmatism, usefulness of strategy, hitting the reality of delivery, how much you get used on a day-to-day basis, and how, when we refresh and review that strategy, are we honest about, has it really changed behaviour? Is it contributing to the culture? Is it making a difference? So I think that, in short, I think it's, yes, in part, it is helpful to have it, but we need to make sure that it serves us and us not serving the process.
Yes. And I was having a conversation yesterday in a different context with Charlotte Black, who obviously used to be the Director of People for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And one of the differences she noticed, she was talking about between the local authority and the NHS is, the NHS, because you're marching to the tune of ministers and NHSE, is for the priorities to change, strategic priorities to change on what feels like quite a short-term basis, when, as you know, dealing with public health, population health, requires a kind of consistency, a long obedience in the same direction, as somebody would say, and so you've got to balance those things. So how can you keep that consistency of, we're working this through, given it takes time?
I think Charlotte's absolutely right that and then there's obviously I've talked about the planning round, the annual kind of cycle of that, and then you factor in the political kind of timescale that go of people moving and people moving on, and how that also adds another time frame around it. So I think that there's something about understanding the game we're all in. I don't mean, or maybe game's not the right word, but the kind of what we're here to actually do. So if you set aside the detail of a strategy, are we clear about what the kind of main aim is? If you think about your vision, how that translates, and how therefore all the things that we're trying to do and deliver and we're focused on an organisational level, because whether it's regulatory requirements, financial, how are they contributing to that, or how are they not? And I think we should pay attention to the things that aren't contributing to our overall aim as much as the things we are. And I think in that regard, what we've really started to think about as a system, it makes it more complicated, is what are the other pieces of work and projects and programmes of work that tend to pop up in year? Are they helping delivering that overall aim? And how do we really start to consider how we focus on the things that are going to make a material difference for today and tomorrow and in the future, as opposed to getting through. And I think that that's probably what Charlotte alludes to. I think that in the NHS, there's so much about getting through winter, getting through that planning process, getting through industrial action. And this isn't about, or shouldn't be about, survival. It's got to be about a purposeful approach and understanding what that purpose is, what you're aiming at and why, and how, when our measures help us to understand if we're making progress or not. And if we're not, why that is, understand why.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about how in the midst of everything, you find, scope and space for doing some of that thinking yourself and helping colleagues do. And I guess, with in an election year, it's even more pressured. What do you find is helpful? Because the fascinating thing about your system, as you know much better than me, but I've kind of worked in and around it for 25 years, is the intellectual curiosity and capacity of people in the system is outstanding. So there's a lot of really intelligent, curious, passionate, committed people. So how can you do that? Some of that strategic thinking and innovation that that's context hopefully encourages or helps.
Yeah. So I think it's great that actually you've noticed that about the system. Is wonderful. I think that, if I'm being really frank, it is a system that is great at generating ideas and innovation and research and development. And if I've been equally frank, I think that sometimes we're not so great at making it happen.
Yeah.
We that consistency and at times kind of methodical approach to getting stuff done is where we kind of get distracted. So in terms of the how, I think it's about bringing together, identifying who those people are, who are the people who are ideas people. And I'm really clear about it. I am the director of strategy, but I'm not a big ideas person. I'm the person who's the lateral, make stuff happen. I'll get things done. I'll sort an order, and being clear about who are the people who are going to innovate. And not always, but often the people who have the innovative ideas, they like bringing about change, they aren't necessarily completer finishers. They'll have a new idea and they're generating those ideas. So it is about, I think, understanding the role that each of us have to play. And that some of that is about our professional role we undertake, where we are in the system, and then our innate skill set. So recognising that and the complexities around that. I also think there's something about being clear, and I don't mean through governance, but how do you bring those people together in their groups of either professional groups or like-minded people to help those kind of ideas to thrive and nurture and grow? And then when that's happened, how do you then kind of pass that on to people who are going to make it happen? And where are they? And how, as part of that, how do the rest of us get out of the way? So I think a lot of making stuff happen is sometimes getting out of the way of it, getting out of the way of the people. And not always thinking, well, if we could just do a bit here and just do the bit there, and it'd be absolutely perfect. Rarely, I think a lot of these things have to be kind of good enough, and recognise that you can plan and strategize and have an action plan, but actually be prepared to be fleet of foot and adjust as you go and learn as you go. And the thing I learned through my system working is accepting that risk is inherent, and it will fail, and things will fail, and you won't be able to get them over the line, and that your view of the world is inherently flawed because you can only see one part of it. So recognizing that actually all of it is about trying to compromise and seeing what good looks like for that system, and having the conversations. So one of the things that you and I've done, Alistair, over the years is just that curiosity of where we're up to, where do we think we're up to, what are others thinking we're up to, and how does progress feel, what's the temperature?
Yeah, well, final question maybe then is, if you think about what you've done and seen happen over the last couple of years in the system, the early days as an ICS, what would one or two of the things that you look and go, that has made a difference to the residents, but also to the staff working in the system? Are there a couple of things you go, yeah, that's been transformation, or at least has been improvement?
Yeah. So I would say the focus we've had operationally on maintaining and being clear about getting the basics right operationally. So yeah, it's been a really tough winter, and last year was a tough winter, and next year will be a tough winter. But being clear about what those basics are and what good looks like, and maintaining rigor and a real kind of sense of the drumbeat, it just means operationally you can keep going. And that what that gives you, and that keeping going, the operational flow and the operational rigor and delivery around it, means that there is headspace for others to think, well, I can think more about the future. So it helps everyone. So the benefit for everyone there. I think that what we hear, and I think that it's not just about what I think, but what I certainly hear back, is how it feels to be part of a system is really important.
Yeah.
And so if I think about when we started a couple of years ago, when I started meeting with voluntary sector colleagues who said, well, actually, you want how it felt to them is that the NHS wants lots in the voluntary sector, but doesn't actually think about how best to engage them, to listen and to respond and to feel an equal partner. So if we want people to behave differently, we have to think about how we bring them in, and how we're articulating something that they can really understand and take part in and feel an equal partner in that journey. I think for the population, and it's early days yet, but being clear about the data we're gathering, how we share that data, what good data looks like in terms of population health, and how we use data along with anecdotal and qualitative feedback to inform strategy and not stray from that. And I think that latter point about not straying from what we know is the right area of focus and the right intent for our population is so critical, because there is so much to do, and with such finite resources and capacity, that actually if you try and do it all, then we will invariably fail. So being clear about the areas you're collectively going to push on. And then I think areas of success, the things I would choose are not necessarily large scale. They aren't the kind of great big transformation. They're the things that happen at local neighbourhoods, in integrated neighbourhoods, with some of the kind of heat hubs, and small things that actually our population say it's made a difference, and things that where we've actually, the real material shifts have been, we've stopped trying to control everything, and just say, look, here's some money, you know what's best, or here's an approach, you tell us what's best, and we'll get on and do it and get out of your way. So that, I think that's stepping back and understanding where and how we influence, and to what at system level, and where and how we say to others, you're better placed, you're at the hyper local level, get on and do it, and what do you need from us to help you do that. That's work in progress though, and it will carry on being.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much. That's really been interesting. Thank you.